Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The Royal is a special film. You're wonderful in it. I thought your performance was great, and the story is really something unique and special. So this is it's going to be fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was wondering, just from your perspective, I mean, just to start us off, what drew you to the story?
I like well, as an actor, I'm a thespian and I like complicated characters. I like complicated protagonists and the fact that this is a biography even made it more compelling that this is someone that I would be able to study in a sense and meet and that his life is still he's still living. He's still writing the final chapters of it,
Mhm.
of his bound volume, and but he has been through so much from his childhood through his meteoric rise to being drafted number two and then being in the World Series and hitting back-to-back home runs and in multiple games. And I got to touch Willie Mays Aikens' bat in Cooperstown, where it's just legendary stuff. And then on the other side, the downfall was precipitous and sharp, and 24 years being sentenced, the largest mandatory minimum sentence for any professional player of any sport, and serving 14 years of that. And how do you reingratiate yourself back into society? How do you get a job now from that? How do you come back to society as a pariah? How do you pick up the pieces of your family after being away for 14 years and not seeing your children grow up? Um, so all of that stuff that a lot of Americans deal with coming back um, from hard falls, and they don't have the nepotism, they don't have the media coverage of someone like Willie Mays Aikens. So for me, I wanted to tell a story like that. It still has the privilege of being a big World Series hero, but it still correlates to a lot of Americans and a lot of things that we go through. And how do you come out from that? What how do you deal with those tough times? How do you deal with addiction?
Yeah.
um, you know, and second chances and accountability and things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think that was one of the things I loved about the film is it focused on the period. Not so like I mean, a lot of stories they tell you the whole story. You know, it's like okay, well, here's the rise, here's the fall, and here's. But this is really about picking up the pieces. Uh,
Yeah. Which we think is more in, for, when you're telling a glimpse of a story, because when you tell, it's hard to fit any story within, 90 minutes to, but you have to choose what part of the story. And as awesome as hitting home runs in the World Series is, or being a young slugger and having the world at your feet, we've seen that.
yeah,
We understand that. And to be quite honest, most people don't relate to that. Most people don't relate to having the world at your feet because you have out of this world talent and promise
mm,
and resources thrown at you.
yeah,
But I think everyone can understand taking a fall. And when you fall from such heights that Willie was at, oftentimes for regular people, you go, well, you get what you get what you deserve because you messed up and you had it all. And we just thought that that would be the place where you would want to see this story. So let us see you now pick up your pieces the same way everyone has. And you know and for all of the people that have been felons in this country that have come back and been model citizens, to show that people getting second chances, people redeeming, people being accountable, taking accountability for the mistakes that they made and not blaming the system. Were there draconian drug sentencing guidelines at time? Yes.
mm,
Yes. And those things were overturned, and he subsequently was released from prison early. But he still had to make the choice, um, to take drugs, to play games high, you know, to womanize and substance abuse. And for that, the accountability that he took for that, to own up to that, and to say that, the best thing ever happened to him in his life is that he was incarcerated, because he probably would have ended up dead if he followed the path that he was on. I think that's the part of the story that attracted me, taking ownership into that, and the everyday man of that, and having to wake up every day and not choose your addiction, not choose your victimization, but choose to be of service, you know choose to be selfless and not live into your own ego and who you were, but to dedicate yourself to your family.
Yeah.
That's the superhero part.
Do you think we put too much pressure on people of high profile to be these heroes? Like you said, Willie was this, he was the man. And then as soon as he started to show his flaws, he got jumped on.
Yeah. Well, I think that often when people get all of these resources thrown at them because they have a talent or a gift, we forget that they come out of the same society that we all come out of.
Yeah.
And that we, many times, a lot of us are dealing with mental illness, or we're dealing with dysfunction that happened when we were younger. And like I said, not to use that as a place of victimhood,
No.
because if we're all dealing with it, some of us still with these issues are upstanding citizens, and do things the right way. But we and so do most ball players, so do most entertainers. But we have a media, we have that, the headline is usually the sensational stuff. So for every guy that's doing the right thing, there's someone like Willie that's going to hit the headlines and go, wow, here's a guy that seemingly has the whole world in front of him, touted as the next Reggie Jackson, piss his career away, piss every good natured thing that has come to him. And the average citizen just doesn't have that type of nepotism, doesn't have big friends in high places that can get you a job even after you make mistakes. So I do think that this reckoning of sorts that we've seen with a lot of high profile men, um, falling from grace, it should be a cautionary tale that as far as with great privilege comes responsibility. And we do look at it in society and go, well, man, when you've been given some good cards in the deck, don't squander it. Don't squander it. So I think there's a big time cautionary tale there. And I do understand why people can look at athletes and entertainers and go, I don't feel sorry for, now pull yourself back up by the bootstraps. I still think that those people deserve second chances. I still do believe that those people, but get it the way that everyone else does, you know, um, because no longer now your fame has become infamous. Now it's flipped the other way. And you can't have it both ways. You can't use those resources and use that privilege, and now that you fall victim to it from your own doing, feel like you are a victim or feel like you're unjustly getting press, when you use all the good nature of press and things of that nature to rise your career.
And you use the term accountability, and absolutely, people need to be accountable. Um, in this story with Willie, we see a guy who genuinely wants to make amends. Um, but there's a struggle because of this public perception of him in a certain way because of this fall. I was wondering, whether from your conversations with Willie or just your views, what do you think it takes to make amends? Does the responsibility lie solely on one person, on both sides? What do you think needs to happen?
That's a difficult one, but judging but for taking Willie's word, you know, from spending time with him and listening to him,
Hmm.
I think that you can apologize. I feel like it's a relationship, and that is in the relationship, whether it's between your family or your community or society at whole. I
Hmm.
feel like rededicating yourself to be in service
Hmm.
of of where you have wronged people
Hmm.
is at least one of the first steps in restoring a broken relationship,
Yeah.
and to be indebted to it, to use it to transmute that energy of a broken relationship to dedicating some or part of your life to restore
Hmm.
and to be in service of.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that has to be written on your mind and your heart. And because we have seen people that within society that you give a second chance to, and people use that as a opportunity to further inflict harm,
Yeah.
so I think that it is something that is ongoing. There's not one apology, there's not one, but it's to be in service,
Hmm.
and is to not, you know yeah, it's to step outside of one's ego, um, and not put the attention on themselves and what they have lost and what they no longer are, or that people haven't forgiven, and to go, where can you impart change? Where can you be a difference? Who can you talk to make sure that they don't take the same steps? Who can you encourage? How can you be of service? I think that's one of the first things that make people go, okay, someone is working in a way to restore what they've broken.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, One of the things I thought was so great about the film. I know we're running out of time, but just before we go, I just thought that I'd ask you about the idea of calling, because there's a great line where Willie's, trying to wrestle with who he is. He's in a church, and someone comes up and says, "I really think you're called to do this." I was wondering what you think that term means, and if you think he has a calling. Do we all have a calling? I was wondering what that meant to you.
For me, it means that that we often hear sayings like your gift can be your curse, and if you're living a faith-filled life, if you're living a life that you have a presence of God in your life, that you are a believer, then you can understand a calling.
Mm.
You can understand how Willie's life, this is how, the way Willie sees his life is that he had to go through what he went through,
Mm.
because that's the only way he would have a testimony to and that's the only way that his ego could be broken to the
Mm.
point where he could be of service. He feels now that he can see clearly now what his purpose is, and because of that, there was a calling already placed on his life. He didn't realize. I watched a man that was a pariah to his city, to the
Mm.
fan base, to his family. I just watched that man this summer go to Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame and play in the All-Star game. Willie Mays Aiken could have easily played his entire career and never played in that and never made it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's the hardest Hall of Fame to get into.
Mm.
Even with a great career, there's so many people with great careers that never make the Hall of Fame. His bat is at Cooperstown. I was able to touch it and watch him swing it, and like, but for him to speak at Congress, for him to be in player development with the Kansas City Royal organization right now, for all of these things to happen because he sees a calling on his life to give back, to not be self-centered, but to put the focus on younger players, to put the focus on his family, to restoring the relationship with his children. I think that's the message, and that's why I wanted to be a part of the project, is because it's tangible, it's real, and for him, perhaps that's not for everyone, but for him, for people like myself, I realize what a calling, the responsibility, and that with that perspective, anything could happen in your life, and you realize that it's not the end all be all because you failed, but you can get back, swing the bat again, because you do have purpose in life. There is a reason why you go through what you go through, to overcome it, not for it to define you.
I love that, and I appreciate it. Honestly, the film is wonderful. I love your work. I love Dope,
Thank
love
you.
Snowfall. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you, but
Thank you.
you're really great in this. The story is wonderful, and I do wish you the best. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Amin.
All right.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too now.
Like